The drama surrounding boxing right now doesn't begin in a ring, and it doesn't end with a knockout. It starts in a quiet, unsettling place where belief erodes. Where fans lean forward not in excitement, but suspicion, and where one of the most influential voices in combat sports finally says out loud what a lot of people have been afraid to admit. Joe Rogan didn't explode because he hates YouTubers or because he's nostalgic for some imaginary golden age. He exploded because, in his eyes, something sacred is being hollowed out in real time, and once that happens, there's no referee count that brings it back. When Rogan talks about fixed fights, you can hear it in his voice before you even process the words. It's not outrage for clicks. It's disbelief curdling into anger. He points to moments that feel wrong in your gut before your brain catches up. A fighter standing still with his hands down, chin exposed, inviting a punch that drops him like a switch was flipped. Movements that don't look like survival instincts, but like choreography. It's not subtle, and that's what makes it worse. Rogan calls it the clearest fixed fight you'll ever see, and once that idea lodges itself in your mind, you can't unsee it. Every replay feels incriminating. Every slow motion clip looks less like sport and more like theater. This is where Logan and Jake Paul enter the story, not as side characters, but as they didn't invent crossover boxing, but they industrialized it. They found a way to bypass promoters, to control the narrative, to turn fights into events where the outcome almost feels secondary to the spectacle. Rogan even acknowledges the brilliance of the business model. Jake Paul figured out how to make absurd money without being trapped by the traditional machinery of boxing. 50 million, maybe 90. Numbers so big, they short-circuit criticism for some people. Respect, they say. Fair play. He gamed the system. But Rogan's problem isn't with the money. It's with what the money starts to think it can buy. Because when influence gets big enough, it doesn't just negotiate purses. It negotiates expectations. It negotiates optics. And if you're not careful, it starts whispering about outcomes. That's the line Rogan is screaming about, because once you cross it, boxing stops being dangerous in the way it's supposed to be. It becomes dangerous in a completely different way. The Anthony Joshua angle is where this story turns from uncomfortable to radioactive. Joshua isn't a loud man. He doesn't posture for headlines. When he speaks, it's measured, almost restrained, and that restraint makes everything heavier. When he dismisses the idea that Jake Paul is on his level, he doesn't do it with insults. He does it with reality. Body of work. Years of sanctioned pain, championships earned, lost, and fought for again. If he said yes, he'd be lying to himself, and he refuses to do that. That calm refusal lands harder than trash talk ever could. Behind the scenes, though, something else is being hinted at, and this is where stomachs tighten. The suggestion that this fight, or versions of it, came with conditions. Not just rules, but understandings. No knockouts. Go the distance. Keep it competitive. Make it look real without letting it get too real. When Rogan talks about this, he's not alleging lightly. He's reacting to a pattern, to a feeling that keeps resurfacing no matter how much people try to laugh it off as conspiracy. Then the whispers get uglier. Lawsuits, off-script accusations. Jake Paul allegedly claiming that Anthony Joshua crossed a line by hitting him too hard, by dislocating his jaw, by turning what was supposed to be controlled violence into actual violence. Read that sentence again and let it sink in, because that's the moment where boxing flinches. The idea that a punch in a boxing ring could be reframed as malicious intent because it violated an agreement is not just absurd. It's existentially threatening to the sport. From Jake's perspective, the argument is framed around control and consent. If there were specific fight rules or clauses, if expectations were set, then breaking them isn't just bad sportsmanship, it's a breach. There are numbers floating around. $20 million mentioned like it's a parking ticket. And suddenly the conversation isn't about jabs and footwork anymore. It's about contracts, liability, and whether the ring is a proving ground or a stage with hidden trapdoors. This is where the reaction splits, and it splits hard. One side sees Jake Paul as a genius who used greed to hoodwink the stupid, As one commentator bluntly put it, he rode his bike around the ring, avoided danger, survived, and walked away richer than most champions will ever be. They see criticism as sour grapes from purists who can't accept that the game has changed. The other side feels something colder. They feel the creeping suspicion that what they're watching might not be real, and that suspicion poisons everything it touches. Rogan articulates that fear better than anyone. Fighting survives on uncertainty. The bell rings, and anything can happen. That's the contract between the sport and the audience. Once fans start wondering if the dice were loaded before the gloves touched, that contract breaks. Suddenly, slow rounds aren't strategic. They're suspicious. A fighter not pressing for a finish isn't patient. He's complying. People start rewatching fights like crime scenes, pausing, zooming, connecting dots that promoters desperately want to keep disconnected. The Joshua Paul fight becomes a Rorschach test. Some people swear Joshua was carrying Jake, pulling punches, throwing singles instead of combinations, letting rounds drift by. Others argue he was cautious, wary of counters, respecting the danger of a glass jaw and a lucky shot. The punch counts get analyzed like stock charts. 8 punches here, 5 there. Fans argue not about who won, but about intent. And that's the real damage, because boxing was never supposed to be about decoding intentions. It was supposed to be about consequences. Joe Rogan's frustration boils over because he's seen this before. It's not in boxing exactly, but in combat sports broadly. He's watched how money and influence can warp incentives. It's how spectacle can start dictating reality instead of the other way around. He's not nostalgic for bare-knuckle brutality. He's defending the idea that when two people agree to fight, the risk is the point. Broken jaws aren't scandals. They're the price of entry. What makes this situation even darker is the power imbalance it exposes. Anthony Joshua can say no. He can draw boundaries. He has leverage, legacy, and options. But what about fighters who don't? What about the ones without platforms, without escape routes, without the ability to walk away from a bag that could change their family's life forever? If scripted outcomes are even casually floated at the top, imagine how quietly they could be normalized lower down. Nods instead of signatures. Ambiguity instead of clauses. Silence instead of protest. That's why Joshua's restraint matters so much. He didn't grandstand. He didn't milk the moment. He didn't turn it into a circus. He simply refused to play along, and that refusal scared people. It signaled that not everyone is for sale, that some lines still exist. And the fact that this refusal might now be met with legal threats only reinforces Rogan's point. If enforcing reality becomes actionable, the sport is in trouble. The leaked script allegations push things even further into nightmare territory. Claims of long-term villain arcs, of strategic matchmaking designed to reshape public perception, of fights engineered to go the distance with predetermined decisions. Whether all of it is true almost becomes secondary to the fact that it sounds plausible to too many people. That plausibility is the rot Rogan is reacting to. Because once fans believe scripting is possible, they'll assume it's probable. And once they assume it's probable, they'll never watch the same way again. The aftermath doesn't bring clarity. It brings fog. Careful statements. People choosing words like they're walking on broken glass. Analysts weighing in indirectly, never quite saying what they mean. That fog is fertile ground for mistrust, and mistrust spreads faster than any hype train. Networks watch nervously. Sponsors recalibrate. Young fighters take notes. Older fighters look back and wonder how many tests they faced without realizing what was really being asked of them. This isn't about hating Jake Paul or Logan Paul. It's about the moment power starts believing it can negotiate reality itself. When violence becomes content. When legacy becomes editable. When a knockout is treated as a breach instead of an outcome, the sport doesn't just change, it loses its spine. Rogan's explosion isn't a tantrum. It's a warning, shouted because whispers haven't worked. And the most unsettling part is that this story doesn't feel finished. It feels paused. There are too many gaps, too many careful omissions, too many people acting like this is normal when it absolutely isn't. Once the idea of a script enters the bloodstream, it never fully leaves. Every future fight carries that shadow. Every spectacular moment gets a question mark attached. If you're uncomfortable, that's the point. Comfort is how this survives. The next reveal won't come with a warning or a promo. It'll drop suddenly, messy and unavoidable, and when it does, boxing might not recognize itself in the mirror anymore. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think scripted elements have already crossed the line in boxing? Or is this all overblown noise around a new era of promotion? Did Anthony Joshua do exactly what a real fighter is supposed to do? Or is there more beneath the surface that we haven't seen yet? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dive story-driven breakdowns like this, make sure to